Hello, everyone, and welcome to what I believe is the first ever BAFTA game session, not just of 2021, but ever. So that is a huge honor for myself, Aoife Wilson. Hello. And yeah, we're here to celebrate all of the amazing nominees for British Game. And today is all about celebrating them. We're going to have a chat. We're going to talk about their craft. We're going to ask some questions and just generally shout about how great the breadth and diversity of games being made in the UK are. And in a very fitting start, me and our speaker today all jumped on a Zoom call and we immediately started talking about the proper way to make tea. So look forward to that and other questions answered as we go today. Also, live captioning is available for this session. So all you have to do is just look down at the bottom of the screen there and click the CC to turn on captioning. Now, if you have any questions yourself, there will be time for those at the end of our sort of discussion now. So drop them in the chat and yeah, we'll hopefully get to as many of those as possible. Our discussion is probably going to run 45 to 50 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes are going to be for an open Q&A. So without further ado, that's enough of me waffling on. Let's maybe go around and have our speakers introduce themselves, their studio, and the amazing game that they're nominated for. So let's maybe start with the wonderful speaker to my left. Hello.
Evening. You okay?
Yeah, how are you?
Yep, very good, thank you. So I'm Lee Mather and I'm a franchise game director at Codemasters on the F1 series, and we've been nominated for F1 2020. We're
Amazing.
Super proud of that.
As you should be. And let's continue on this way.
Hi, my name is Waterhouse. I'm a design director at Sumo Digital. I've been a game designer for the past 15 years, most recently working on Sackboy, A Big Adventure.
Hello, my name is Siobhan Reddy and I'm the studio director at Media Molecule. We're here today. Oh, sorry, what am I talking about? We made a game called Dreams, and that was the latest game that we made. We specialize in creative gaming. So that's Sackboy character. Very happy and delighted with what you've been doing with him, Ned. It's awesome. We're very big fans. So yes. Anyway, that's me.
Amazing. Who is next?
Hello, I'm Ben Nizan. I'm a lead level designer at Mediatonic on a game called Fall Guys. We launched last year in our quest to become the greatest game show on earth, and we're doing a pretty good job so far, I think.
I would say so.
Hey, I'm Stephen Burgess. I'm from Hello Games, and I was the lead designer on a game called The Last Campfire.
Awesome.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm from Polygon Treehouse. We're in Cambridge, and I'm one of the creative directors and lead developers of Roki, which is a 3D explorer puzzle adventure game inspired by Scandinavian folklore.
And I think that's everyone. Amazing. Well, you know, first off, congrats, everyone. It's such a huge achievement to even be nominated for a BAFTA Games Award. So, like, yeah, it's incredible. And I think do we have a mixture here of returning sort of previous nominees and also brand new nominees as well?
Mm-hmm.
I'm brand new.
Yeah, brand new.
Awesome. Here as well.
we
So
actually
cool.
won. We did win back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a long break.
my
A few
gosh.
nominations, but it's been a bit of a break since a win.
Amazing. Well, you know, I think, like, personally, I think this category is really exciting because it does encompass such a diverse range of genres and styles.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, just to sort of get stuck in with right at the very start of your processes, how do you tease that concept or spark of a new idea, you know, whether that's a brand new game concept or the evolution of a series into a working project? I mean, how do you know when an idea is ready for the next stage? And I'm just kind of throwing that out to everyone.
I think for us, Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, of course.
So I think for us, like we had this kind of a, I guess you come at it from all kinds of different angles. We had this idea of like we wanted to kind of modernize the classic adventure game, the games that we loved like playing growing up. We've been making like first-person shooters for a while when we were at Sony, which is what we used to do, and we kind of fancied making something that was kind of more about thinking and like lateral thinking, and also like a non-violent game that hit you with some heavy emotions and some light emotions, and so that was kind of like one of the ins we had. We didn't know what the setting was. We didn't know, but that was kind of like a high-level goal that we were kind of interested in exploring. And then as I think of like when you kind of know you've got the thing, I kind of think like we had a thing where we had this genre we were interested in, and then we kind of got interested in Scandinavian folklore, and it wasn't really the gods. It was more like the creepy losers from the caves, the forests, and we just got really enchanted by them, and we kind of knew the ones. Kind of,
who doesn't?
Yeah.
yes, quite. So that was kind of our in.
Awesome.
Sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say, I think that moment of when you know is so true, because we have quite a robust pitching process at Mediatonic, but Fall Guys completely skipped over all of that. And our lead designer, Joe, just had some video clips from Takeshi's Castle and just said, no one's made a game of this yet. And then everyone just knew that was the thing to do. And then the myth goes, it was just that in a slideshow, sent it off to our publishers, and they were like, yeah, here's the money, do it.
Yeah, because I mean, Fall Guys is a battle royale game, but it's not the kind of battle royale game that we're used to seeing. I mean, was it inspired by a desire to put a different spin on that genre? Was it literally Takeshi's Castle? That seems like a good thing.
Our creative director had actually said, please don't pitch me any battle royales, because by the time we make one, they'll be done. There'll be no room left for it. And Joe, our lead designer, was like, okay, but what about if it was that, but with Takeshi's Castle? And then, yeah, it happened.
And it was called something else to begin with, wasn't it? It was called like Fool's Gauntlet.
Fool's Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Originally, what could have been.
I think Fall Guys works pretty well, though.
I think so.
But also, Alex, to go back to you, so you guys are nominated for Best Debut Game and Best British Game. I mean, that's a pretty good start for a new studio. So you mentioned like being inspired by the losers, and the cave dwelling creatures of that folklore. Is that like, where did the fascination with sort of merging Scandinavian folklore and point and click adventures into something brand new come from?
Well, we knew we wanted to tell a story that had an emotional impact, but we knew we wanted to basically have this collision of the fantastical and the real, and this kind of human emotion, and actually brought a lot of that human emotion into the kind of folklore cast of characters that are there. And I think that kind of blend of creepiness, cuteness, and kind of Arctic emotions was kind of, we had, sometimes you'll get like a memory that's like a really clear thing that really resonates with you. And we both remembered watching an episode of the Moomins cartoon when we were growing up. It has this creature called the Groke. I think it's the Groke, which basically is this creature with like unblinking eyes that gradually proceeds towards the village or houses and freezes everything and everyone on its path. And it's kind of like, as a child, it's terrifying. Actually, it just wants a friend. And every time he gets close to someone, he literally freezes them. But there's that kind of some of that bittersweetness of like the kind of, it's kind of sweet, it's kind of sad, it's kind of scary. There's something kind of nice there. And I'm guessing you get the like range of tone that makes things feel like have texture. So yeah, there was something there in just that kind of, you can quite touch it, but there's a mix of things there that we kind of riffed on, I guess.
Yeah. I love that as well, because it's the thing that's really cool is that it's from a child's perspective, obviously, but like children love the macabre, don't they? They love grim, weird stuff, and I think like that captures it perfectly. All these because it's quite dark as well, and like there's no reason the kids can't kind of dip their toe into those darker fairy tales.
Yeah, we had like a kind of mantra I kind of stuck on a post note, which was like, make it weirder. Do like one pass and then go, yeah, maybe
make it weirder. I love that.
But Ned, the world of Sackboy is kind of familiar and fantastic all at once. And I mean, that's kind of due to its sort of homemade, whimsical, lovely style as well. But how do you keep that fresh over several iterations? I mean, as was often the case with Little Big Planet games before it, Sackboy, I'd say, is like easy to play, tricky to master. And that's got to be a hard line to walk, especially when, you know, you're talking about kids games as well.
Yeah, it was really difficult. It's, you know, it's a game that can be played with 1 to 4 players, and we really wanted this to be a game that families and friends could play together. So we had this sort of like this sort of a mantra through development, which was best shared with friends. We wanted families to be able, you know, parents or siblings or whoever, to play this together, but you get a range of abilities in that. And so we had to sort of pitch that difficulty quite carefully, and also give players ways of helping each other. And, you know, but again, it's a platform game as well. So we had to do stuff for the real, like, diehard fans of the genre. So we tried to make the controls really accessible, really easy to pick up and play, but make sure they had depth and nuance. And then we put some of the more challenging content off of the critical path. And then as players become more familiar with the game, the challenge ramps up towards the back end. So, but it was a really tricky line to walk.
Yeah. And Stephen, the last Campfire was developed by 3 people in total?
Yeah, so there was, at the end, there was 3 full-time devs, and then we have obviously a massive support team at Hello kind of thing who were helping us through it. But yeah, me and Chris were on it for 5 years. It was just us just like banging heads against each other trying to figure out what this thing was. But like Alex was saying, it's kind of come from the place of, like, we have these sort of funny childhood memories of things. So for me, it was like the heath at the back of our house kind of thing, was just, it's getting dark, gets a little bit creepy. And we said that like a Dark Crystal, if you've seen it, that kind of, there was things that we were watching as kids that are really terrifying, but like somehow we wasn't scared, like it sticks with us, and we wanted to expose other people to these weird worlds kind of thing, you know, like we weren't going in the game, like we didn't know people could go in the corner and not know whether that thing was going to hurt them or be a friend, that kind of, you know, towing this line of being unsure. And that's how as kids we were kind of in all places that we went to.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, I don't remember being scared by the Dark Crystal when I watched it as a kid. It's far scarier as an adult.
Yeah, it is terrifying. It really is terrifying now. All of those things, like in Neverending Story, I think it's the horse. I'm sure, right? I'm sure horses were killed in the making of that film, but I had to Google it the other day, and I was like, no, they're all fine. But like that, I have this image of the horse, but somehow we survived it, you know, and it comes like influences the things we do later in life.
Yeah, I think that, well, those are the things that really like make an impact as well. Like, I still can't think of that without, I'm honestly emotional thinking about that horse now. Gosh. But yeah, no, I mean, 3 people is an incredible achievement. And that was part of, it was like an internal thing that Hello Games had to sort of encourage new initiatives.
Yeah, so I first joined Hello Games and worked on Joe Danger on iOS and Joe Danger Infinity. So we already had kind of working relationship, and then we decided to basically try and create a new team within the team, which would work on something smaller initially, is where we're kind of going. So we tried to work out what we would make, and that, yeah, then over the years we kind of got towards what Campfire would eventually be.
So cool. Siobhan, Dreams has obviously been in development for a long time, but it's also going to be, you know, continually developed, and it's going to evolve over time as well. But how has it, you know, from like initial concept to, I think you officially launched just over a year ago now, right?
Yeah.
How did the concept change and evolve over that period?
Over the period of development, I mean, I think we sort of started at the point where we'd finished Little Big Planet 2, and you know, by that point we were pretty hooked on the idea of consider continuing on with the idea of user-generated content games. But we also had a team that were interested in making something that came from a very sort of special kind of childhood place, which was Tearaway. But anyway, focusing on Dreams, it started very much as a how do we, instead, with Little Big Planet, the sort of theming of it had been so strong that creators really had to work very hard to be able to imprint their own style on the screen. And what we really wanted to do with Dreams was have something where when you looked at it, you'd go, that's a Wargarble piece, or yep, that's Seb and Lottie, or yep, that's John Beach, that's Beach Corp. And that was the goal right from the beginning. It just took a lot of effort to get there, really. The goal itself and the ambition didn't really change massively over time, but figuring out how you'd actually have a UI that brought in sculpting and animating and music and logic all under one neat little set of buttons just took a lot of time and iteration. But it was that flow state, like the sort of watchwords at the beginning were things like performance and things like serendipity. Wanted people to get lost in the act of creating, so that and that means then that the act of creating needs to be fast, because you need to be able to get lost enough that you're not worried about losing time, that like if you sort of can allow yourself to follow your nose a little bit, and then if you make a mistake, maybe it's a happy accident and it leads you somewhere completely amazing, or maybe you're just like, no, that was crap, I'll just go backwards. So we sort of had a lot of this thinking, very much was like, we want people to be able to put their own styles out there, we want them to be able to do that, and we want them to be able to really get lost in the act of creation. And they were the things that we spent a lot of time really working on. And obviously we always had the idea that out of that we would build this sort of community of people that had just, therefore showed off lots of different types of creativity, because that's really what gets us, out of bed in the morning, is sort of sharing this love that we all have of making stuff, but sort of trying to find ways to lower the barriers to entry for people. People do that. So yeah, it definitely, it evolved as making games. There's thousands, millions of problems that we all solve day to day. The whole thing is one big puzzle.
Yeah.
So you sort of make sort of turns, but the vision actually was very, very from the beginning was sort of quite clear. I think it was everybody else who realized how bold and ambitious that was. And luckily we had wonderful support to be able to actually realize that so far.
It feels like it's almost about, because obviously the end goal is having players create for themselves, but I guess games like that sort of offer up all these experiences on a platter, they can be quite intimidating. So it's about building a tool set that's not going to be too scary, but it is also complex enough that they can create the amazing things that they're right now creating.
Yeah, and it's helping people find that way in. And that's what we sort of really try to do. And it's sort of an ongoing effort to sort of help people find their way in. It can be hard. Like I really, really want to start gardening, but I just find it really overwhelming. Like, how do I dig a proper garden patch? I don't know. And like, you can sort of as an adult get so scared by, I'm not going to do it right, and it's not going to be perfect, and whatever. And I think that's where actually I love seeing in the Dreams community a real mix of age groups. There's like grandparents and kids, there's people our age, and then there's kids who just don't they don't care. They just crack on, they're unafraid. And I think that that's the energy of the community, as a group of people who sort of take that step and inspire each other. And I think that, it's a good lesson to all of us to sort of, give new things a go, and to not be frightened of being perfect. You don't need to be perfect. Like my moment with Dreams, my personal moment, was I was trying to make an octopus, and I spent a long time making an octopus, and octopuses are actually incredibly difficult to make, just FYI. And I spent ages, and at one point I just thought, oh man, and I thought, I'm just going to make the most puppety looking octopus I can. And I just did this octopus in like 5 minutes. I'm going to do it in 5 minutes. And I just made the most goofy, ridiculous looking octopus. And then I made a song in like 5 seconds. And it was the most creepy, weird little octopus garden song. And I just loved it. And I was like, I'm overthinking this. I just need to like have a play and stop thinking I have to make something that wins an Oscar. It doesn't need to. It's just expression.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, you guys face some unique challenges this year with F1 2020. The calendar, I mean, it started 4 months later than planned. And as a series known for its authenticity, how was that? Oh, that must have been quite stressful for the team.
Yeah, it always is most years when unforeseen circumstances crop up. But yeah, obviously this year last year was even worse and quite surreal, to be honest. But obviously we got the game out. The team mobilized to work from home really effectively. Obviously we were right through the sort of hitting alpha when things started to really lock down. But yeah, I mean, we managed to pull it off. Okay, the game came out. It was a spectacular game, and it was obviously the core of the experience, the Formula One part of it, which was the hardest to achieve, which is essentially our bread and butter. That's what we do every year. You know, listening to what everybody was saying about the creativity that you get in a game that isn't based on something like Formula One. We have to show our creativity within obviously the constraints of Formula One. I think that challenges the team to do something a little bit different with a racing game. Obviously we're a racing title, but we're also a sports game. And I think the fact that 2020 came out and it was hard because of the issues with COVID and what was going on around the world, but that didn't prevent the team from really innovating in a racing game. And things like my team, for example, really gelled with the community and everybody loved it. So the core of it was tricky, but yeah, we got there.
And speaking on that, are there any specific challenges or particular moments that anyone here can recall, like having to push through on their particular games? I know COVID probably hit a little bit later in development for everyone here, but even any other experiences or challenges you had before that?
I think we've been working from home for like the whole development, so like for the 2 years prior to when it hit. So my kind of day-to-day work didn't really change, which really made me question my life choices. But yeah, so we were kind of like relatively, we were quite like fortunate in some ways. And there was like some things where, like it generally from working from home, like we'd usually have like coffee shop days where we'd go and all get like a nice big cup of coffee and sit around with our sketch pads, like swapping notes and stuff. And I think it's those like little top-up days that we kind of really miss. But I think we were pretty fortunate.
Mm. I mean, I think. Oh, so you go ahead, Lee.
So no, please go.
I was just going to say, I think like development is just often I mean, for us, there's sort of little moments which happen throughout where, you feel like you're making progress and then a snowball comes out from nowhere and like knocks you back a bunch of steps. I think that's really normal in development to kind of have those moments. And, it can be a very small thing that feels like a big snowball, and it can be a very big thing as well. But I think the thing that I'm always in admiration of the teams is people's ability to sort of problem solve and to sort of pick themselves back up and sort of figure out and look objectively at a problem and sort of think, well, how do we actually move forward with this? And sometimes that is, cutting a feature, and sometimes it's actually solving the problem, and sometimes it's having the argument you don't want to have. Sometimes it's letting go of the thing you love. Like, I think that there's a lot of different things, and I'm sure everybody's had those experiences where you just sort of, it's the trickiest when you're not expecting it. But I think we're also almost weirdly practiced at that too as game developers, to be like, well, you were making something up from nothing, like it's magic. And we can't foresee the future. So like there will be things as much as we try and sort of forward plan and sort of think forward. So yeah, I think that's my sort of
I was laughing because there was just sage nods from everyone at that point.
Well, I think to give you some idea of just how spectacular the job the team did on F1 2020, if you consider that the season starts around March, and that's when we finally get to see the cars on track, and that's when we start to balance the handling. Well, none of that happened. So in a period of time where every year we know roughly when the season's going to start, we know when the cars are revealed, we know the performance that's going to sort of pan out through the rest of the season. We had none of that, so we were flying blind for the first time, since we started.
How do you figure that? I mean, is it just a day by day thing, like just literally laying the tracks as you go?
So circuit wise, obviously we
Literally
thought
laying the
knew,
tracks.
we thought we knew which circuits were coming. And obviously the drivers, some of the new drivers, we weren't able to scan them because we'd go to the races and we'd 3D scan their faces. We weren't able to do that, obviously. We had no idea of the performance order. We sort of thought that, Mercedes would be dominant still. But again, it was a bit of guesswork. And then obviously the circuits, the changes to the actual season itself. It left us blind for a few months, but they did an amazing job.
Yeah, and it's almost a testament that your series is known for authenticity, but it's a testament to how much the game is loved and how good the games now are, that even without those finer details, it's still an incredible game.
I think we feel like we do the core on track experience beautifully, and it'll always be well known for that, but there's so much more to it now, which I think is what justifies sort of why it's here today. It's more than just an on-track experience. And as everybody else was saying about the things that excite you, the things that get you up in the morning, the things that you love about game development, we have those same feelings for not only the game but for the sport as well. And there's such a large amount of people on the team who love Formula One. So it's all, why do you love Formula One? The racing's fun, but it's the drivers, it's the sport around it, it's the glamour, and that's the sort of thing that inspires us to make Formula One.
Yeah. Ben, do you think at least part of Fall Guys' success is kind of the simplicity of its design? Because wasn't there was a thing that you guys had that each sort of race, I guess, had to be explained in 3 words, each event more like?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a spreadsheet full of these little 3-word descriptions. Some of them are a bit longer, but we usually boil them down. But the game is meant to be like a low barrier to entry, so particularly those first rounds that the players will play. So it's structured like a game show, and you have to play through 5 rounds. And the first ones tend to be races, so they're just obstacle courses, and you just need to run and jump over the obstacles and get to the finish line. It's quite easy. There's not even really any camera control in those early levels because it's just straight to the finish. Then we do layer in a little bit more as it goes. So we'll start to introduce grabbing objects and then maybe having to move your camera around a little more. But it is that kind of party game thing where there are lots of smaller games inside this large pool of things that you're playing out of order or in a random order. So each of those mini games needs to be easily explainable, so that people can have a concept of the wider game show, I suppose.
You say it's kind of simple, but I still haven't won a crown, and I have played it a lot. So
yeah, well, that was kind of conscious because we knew what we really wanted to create were those moments in Takeshi's Castle or Rick's Knockout where people fall into the gunge.
Yeah.
So the game has to be difficult for that reason, because otherwise you're never going to fail. But the important thing for us from the very beginning was that failing should be funny. So it should be when you get hit by a hammer and knocked into the slime, or you end up falling into someone else and knocking them over, which is actually quite rare in games. Falling over doesn't tend to happen that much, actually, particularly in something multiplayer. So we knew that failing had to be funny, and then that would get you to pick yourself up again and keep going. But as part of that, that's why the game has to be simple, because when you fail, it needs to feel like it's something you did, so that you pick it up again and you'll start playing rather than the game has cheated you, I suppose.
Ned, Sackboy was announced as at the PlayStation 5 reveal event and released as a very prominent PS5 launch title. Now, that would have been a lot of pressure even before a pandemic. How was that for you guys?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was pressured, but and the pandemic, added a little bit to that pressure. But it was also really exciting. I mean, it's not often you get the chance to be part of a launch lineup, and that was a real privilege. And I think, as developers, it's always fun when you get your hands on new hardware and you get to play around with new toys. So that really added to it. So yes, there was pressure there, but also, there was a lot of excitement, and there was some fun to be had too.
Mm. Stephen and Alex, I guess. So I've played both of your games, absolutely love them. But when I start thinking about how the puzzles must be layered onto the game world and how everything feeds back on each other, I start feeling like Charlie in that It's Always Sunny meme, where I'm just at the corkboard being like, how do you start mapping that out? Where, I guess, what's the process? Do you start with the puzzles and then you start trying to piece them together?
Do you want to go first?
You go for it, Stephen.
So there was no, I think it's a chicken and egg. There was basically no correct way. Like for different puzzles, we'd have the idea of how we wanted the forlorn in that to be, like what they were trying to deal with or how they were feeling, and then be able to think, oh, there's a mechanic that will suit that feeling. And then sometimes there was a situation in the world where we'd be like, oh no, this is a problem that, say, the cook is dealing with, you know, they're perfectionists, and then everything is feeding into that. So we make their puzzle all about their own kind of how they're seeing themselves through other people's eyes and things like that. So it depends on the situation, which one was like the most appropriate. But there is a weird thing. So when COVID hit, it was we kind of said, right, we know what we're going to do. This is the final 6 months kind of thing. We're going to be shipping. And then it was like, right, we're packing up our offices. So we're going to have to figure out how to do this at home. But we always had these sort of themes inside of like hope and finding hope and helping other people. But it's weird that when we all got locked at home, suddenly all that stuff became more real. You know, like we were like, oh, I can really relate to trying to help these people, and some people can't be helped, and that everyone was starting to sort of really appreciate what these characters were going through in a lot more personal level than maybe they did, you know, a few weeks before, kind of thing. So it was strange. I think the game got a lot stronger because we were dealing with a lot more that the characters were kind of trying to deal with as well. So it made it a lot more personal by the time we'd finished, like, because we had real experiences kind of going into it.
Yeah, weirdly, that's kind of that has quite a lot in common with some of our kind of our stuff, I guess, because basically telling as well as like going into the wilderness and meeting all these monsters, it's kind of a story about reforging of this broken family. And so, like, high level, looking at kind of the puzzle, like the puzzle design stuff, a lot of it was about forming strong bonds with characters. And so the first act of the game is Tuve and her young brother Lars, and she's almost like a surrogate parent, and a lot of it is quite simple puzzles. It's about, you know, you're doing stuff to take care of your little brother, and it's about, you know, forming that bond. So when he gets spirited away, you actually care, hopefully. And then in the second act of the game, it's kind of about Tuve, and then there's segments where she's kind of confronting kind of distorted memories from her past. So at high level, we were basically like looking at, okay, how can we tell a story in the puzzles? I'm kind of a bit of I don't really like cutscenes. And so like I one of the things I'd like to do is tell story in the puzzles, in the gameplay. That's kind of one of the things we always tried to do. Can't do it 100%, you know. And in the third act of the game, it's kind of a spoiler, but there's kind of like a new way the gameplay changes significantly, which then is, you know, really reinforcing this kind of reforging of this family. So and outside of that, it's a lot of iteration. Try something can make sense on paper or in a design document. You can even like put it in and try it, but even like user testing, like just as soon as possible, even as painful as it may be, just to kind of get an early kind of eye on. That was one of the key, you know, I talked at the beginning about, you know, making a kind of modern version of classic adventure games. One of the key things was like making a frustration-free adventure. I don't think we've done that entirely, but I think we've got a long way there. And part of that is puzzle design and having layered systems in there that if you get stumped, you have somewhere to go. So we have like a journal that can help give you kind of like some soft guidance. We also have like some oracle characters which can give you a steer, but within the fiction of the game world, there's like a tree with lots of eyes. It's kind of creepy, but
super creepy.
Yeah, the puzzle stuff has been really, it's the most difficult thing, because it's like different people expect different things or have different kind of skill levels. One of the things that I've had, so my mum has this is the first game she's done this, but she's nearly finished The Last Campfire. And like, how have you? Yeah, she's not played any of my other games, and this was the one that's kind of pulling her through. And she said, I don't usually like puzzle games, but I like this one. And I'm hoping it's not just a mum thing, but like she seems to be getting through kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I've put puzzles together, have just thought, oh, it's really obvious, it's really easy. And like you say, you send it off to other people to play, and then you just get screams down the phone like, I can't do this is impossible. You're like, yeah, but it's really obvious, isn't it? Kind of thing. And it's just lots and lots of iteration, trying to find a balance of just the right level to challenge enough people, but also not too frustrating so that they don't get stuck.
And I guess speaking of iteration as well, Siobhan, you guys very much developed Dreams kind of with your community, right? Like they named the engine, they really had a hand in everything. The bubble bath engine, which is just the cutest thing ever.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking, you know, the whilst the vision didn't change from the beginning, we got to a point where when we released it, the early access, and even the beta before that, and you know, like we have always sort of engaged with the community and a lot, and so yeah, the beta and the early access sort of just taught us so much, and I think you know, we've made so many changes to Dreams based on the feedback that we get, or the sort of experiences or user experiences that people want to have. And I think last year, one of the things that I loved about the live team was the way that they responded to lockdown was to sort of figure out ways to run events within the game. We don't have multiplayer as yet, but so Abby ran a sort of, you know, to begin with a walk in Dreams where people made a level that you would just sort of walk through, and then with the Dreamscom, which was a like Dreamscom obviously, so a games convention, and then All Hallows Eve, which was a sort of Halloween haunted house. And I've loved sort of seeing the sort of two really big evolutions of kind of running a content platform, so figuring out how to put the right stuff in front of people, but then also the evolution of like a community platform where people are engaging with each other on these experiences, and that's before we even have multiplayer. So I think that there's been, you know, responding to and working with and sort of helping people have sort of creative experiences, or just really sort of communal experiences with people is definitely been some of the stuff that we've been working on. But yeah, with something like Dreams, you can't really finish it in the studio. You have to finish it with the people who are going to be using it, because there's no amount of user testing ultimately that can sort of show you what it's like to just be a person at home who wants to make a game about, I don't know,
octopuses,
animals. Do you know that was the thing? My favorite thing about Dreams launch has been people love animals so much, and they make the most beautiful art and games about animals, and it just warms my heart.
Oh, I love it. So here's a question for everyone, I guess. What is it like releasing a game in a pandemic? And actually, what's a launch day for a game that you've worked on like? Do you step away from social media entirely? Do you read every tweet? Do you read every review? What is it like for you guys individually?
Ours was pretty crazy because the game was way big. We've said this before, but the game was way bigger than we thought it was going to be. But to the extent that on launch day, everyone had to jump in and be a community support because we didn't really have a team to run it. We spun one up pretty quickly. Thankfully, our outsourced QA department were able to get people to come and do that. But we were there, you know, not answering the telephones, but answering the emails, like just swarming in and trying to fix things. So yeah, we couldn't really shy away from it. But at the same time, that was a really nice experience because I think Siobhan talking about the community being involved and ours have been a big part of shaping the game. And I think we very quickly realized how much people loved things. And so we really had to just everyone muck in and absorb as much of that information as possible to make things good. But yeah, we were manning the telephone, so to speak, on that first day, so we could step away.
I spent the pretty much the whole of launch day watching streams of people playing the game. And I like when I started making games. Oh man, it was
not building up.
Yeah, exactly. You watch the whole thing through your fingers, like, are they going to understand this? Are they going to get stuck here? But it was fantastic because when I started making games, you didn't get that experience at all. You just, you know, the game went out, it went on a disc, and that was that. And just to see people enjoying the game and getting it and having fun together, it was great. It was really good.
I love that.
I do miss that side of discs. So the last few games I've worked on have been digital only, and the process for like finishing it is clicking like submit, and then you're like, is it got? You wait for an email. Like it used to be like a disc, and you'd have someone run into the post office with it, kind of thing. So there's a little bit of the buzz that's that's different now. And now everything is after. You wait for like people's reactions. That's the stuff that you're kind of really looking for.
I think we went down to Game in Guildford as a team en masse, which is like the Guildford game development scene's usual habit when they release something on a disc. And that was really fun. But it was a weird time actually, because this had all sort of started, like we released on Valentine's Day last year. And at that point, Sony had actually already started to react really responsibly. So it was sort of, there's a lot kind of going on in the air of what was about to happen. But so I think actually the last event that I went to was the MCV Awards, where Dreams won a couple of awards. And that was our last time all together. And then it was basically... it's weird. Launch Day is really exciting. Like it's just a really exciting day. But yeah.
Do you get a sense of whether you might be nominated for an award on launch day, or does that usually come later?
I think one of the things for us was, not really about awards, because twice all the nominations and stuff is like, beyond our, we didn't really imagine any of that stuff, and we're really, obviously we're tiny, right? So we're really, staggered to even be a part of this. I think one of the things that I was really shocked about was we kind of thought the kind of puzzles in our game were kind of good, and we were kind of quite proud of them. I don't think we were quite prepared for how much the narrative of the game would resonate with people. That was a real shock. We started getting messages from people saying they'd ugly cried, and because basically we were like making them, they are into the game with this thing about folklore and monsters, and then we kind of started to explore some of the kind of inner, the inner drama, I guess, and the inner story. And so that for me, that was like, I've worked on quite a lot of PlayStation games before, but because this game is quite personal to us, we're like a tiny team, and so that was, we're getting the message from people telling me that how it resonated with them because of something that happened in their family, and like really quite personal stories and quite touching. So that was kind of like, really took me aback, and I wasn't expecting that at all. And so I guess you can, because I think you can get quite close to, well, certainly for us being a small team, and get quite close to what we're making. You don't really see it, and maybe how other people can see it. And so that was the big like, oh, we might have done something that's quite good.
Well, I think one of the really lovely things about everyone in this category is that you all have such engaged, imaginative, just lovely communities who celebrate your games in very unique ways. Like, you've got fan art, you've got streams, you've got, awards as far as the MPs go as well. And Lee, you guys kind of have like up and coming racers like play the game, especially on their off season, right? Like it's just really cool to see how each game has sort of found its tribe a little bit and garnered and fostered a community. What are your individual tips for up and coming games makers to to create that environment, I suppose?
I think, as you say, we've got a really strong community now, especially some of the guys who stream the game. It's really becoming a broad community, and like the online element now, the esports side of things as well has grown massively. And if you look back to when we started in 2017 with the esports series to where we got to during 2020, obviously it was accelerated a little, but we had celebrities, we had Formula One drivers, we had our popular community members all playing the game. And I think it's basically, even though it's not an on-track racing game, it's their character, it's the way they go about what they do. I mean, I'll use a prime example. There was a guy, used to be known as Matty G, he's now Matty WTF1. He was one of our big streamers originally. He used to do a thing called the Rage Kitchen, where he'd stand in his parents' kitchen in front of some chintzy curtains, and he'd rage about what had gone on in the Formula One that weekend. And then he'd play the game and he'd get online, and it just resonated with the community. And I think, so, having that sort of strong character and a real passion for the sport, and in his case, an obsession with some of the drivers, it sort of resonates with the fans. So I think that's what they're good for. And also something that Formula One's really good at is it takes people on a journey, doesn't it? It's not just a race by race thing. It's the story of the season. It's the story of how the drivers have performed throughout that year. And when people are playing their own personal career playthroughs, they're having those journeys and they're telling those stories through their streams and through their channels. And I think that's something that makes them, really makes them particularly popular. And then, of course, there's those who are just good at racing. They're super strong drivers, and you'll see those competing in the esports and competing online. And we have a number of leagues that people run as well. So there's different ways in which people can enjoy watching Formula One content, I think.
Amazing. I could keep asking questions all night, but I think we should probably go to some of the Q&As as well. We can come back maybe if there's some time. So we had anonymous attendee asked, what do you think are the key components of your studio's culture, and how have they manifested in your game that has been nominated? That's a really good question. Who wants to start?
Wow, that is a big question.
Yep.
I think for us, we're just very open with each other. Like we talk a lot about different things, about like what we did the weekend, to what we're interested in, what we're watching, and kind of we put a lot of ourselves into our games. You can see it in anything that you play of ours, that just we are in there, and I think you can feel a Hello Games game from other things, because we're a really really tight group of people that really like hanging out with each other.
I think all the games Mediatonic has made, they're varied, but they're pretty colourful, and they're also very weird. So we did the Hatoful Boyfriend, the pigeon dating simulator, brought that over from Japan. And I think you can see the roots of all those things in Fall Guys, which was just, whose mantra was it earlier, was make it weirder. I think that's kind of what we were doing as well. But we're all goofballs, so it kind of helped making the game be what it was, I guess.
I think for us, it would be things like, if I think about all of the molecules, the studio culture is very, it's inclusive, it's playful, it's serious, I think, which is one of the things people don't always associate with us, but, people are pretty, to sort of really get to that granularity on tools takes people really, really going there with them. But I think it's community, like one of the things about the studio is it's a great community of people. I think they're just the best. And when I look at what they therefore put out on the screen and how much the studio wants to bring people into creativity, that love of making is just so part of all of us that it's what we desperately want to share with people. And inclusivity, playfully, a bit of anarchy, and then a dash of seriousness.
I'm sorry, go for it.
You go ahead, Alex.
No, well, mine will probably be quite quick. I think the kind of thing that probably reflects like our view of the world, or where we were at least when we were making the game, was that we wanted to make a game that had that kind of undercurrent of kindness. I think just looking out at the world and seeing everything that was going on, we just found that really appealing. And so I think we were probably all looking out at the world feeling quite weary. And so the idea of making something that had elements of hope and kindness running through it, I don't think it was even a conscious thing. I think it just kind of like spat out of us.
Alex, I'm gonna cry. That's so beautiful. Oh, that's gorgeous.
I don't think I can follow that very poetic answer. I think my rather mundane answer is that we for our team, collaboration is really important, and we try and make sure that or we do make sure everyone has a voice, everyone can give feedback on anyone's piece of work, constructive feedback, and the output of our team is very much a collaborative team effort.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I'll also struggle to follow on the overly emotional sort of side of things, because we don't obviously get the character driven stuff for F1, but obviously we've got a team that they work on a Formula One title annually, and to some people that would be difficult, but the studio's full of so much excitement and passion, and people love Formula One, and if they join the team and they've got a passing interest, within weeks, they're just as obsessed as the rest of us. They absolutely need to know every last element about the sport, and they want to make the best Formula One game they possibly can. And obviously there's an element of competition as well in Codemasters, because each of the teams is producing a racing game and everybody wants to, make a really strong racing title. And also, it's quite sad actually that 12 months before we were obviously went into lockdown, we relocated to a beautiful new studio. And it was designed with just such a lovely flow and creativity, in mind, with lovely breakout areas and places where people could sit and chat and have a coffee. And, you weren't just having meetings in meeting rooms, you were having meetings in nice spaces where people could, play games. They got board games and things set out. And it was such a beautiful environment, such a lovely place to work. And I think it's a shame that we're not getting that at the moment.
Yeah. COVID. Kate Timms asked, as so many new people have picked up gaming during the pandemic, that's so true. Do you think this widening of the gaming audience will impact on game development in the next few years?
I think certainly, because I think probably most of our journeys into games are because we played them. And I think as you start to introduce new communities into games, be that mobile gamers or people playing more casual titles, I think you're going to inspire creatives from those groups of people, and then they're going to want to make games, and they're going to want to make games that appeal to them. And that's a good thing, because it just means there's going to be more things for people to play, and then that's kind of a spiral, right? Those then attract more people who then want similar things, and they'll branch into new wonderful things too. Yeah, it's great.
Paul Philby asked, which of the other games nominated would you have liked to have worked on?
All of them.
Love them. It's such a great group.
Yeah, it is pretty great.
I'm actually really fascinated by, because I hadn't actually got into it in the last few years, but I was really into Formula One. And I think because I'm really into narrative, and I'm kind of not obsessed. I'm really interested by this kind of like soap opera in sport, because obviously people don't think there's that kind of like narrative between players and managers, and how that ebbs and flows and all the various things that go on around it. And there's something really interesting about the kind of the narrative of sport that I find it fascinating.
Yeah, Lee said it isn't character driven, but it is driven, so halfway there.
Yeah, and I think if anybody's ever watched Drive to Survive on Netflix,
yes.
you really do get to see.
Yes, very much.
I think some people feel Formula One can look quite sanitized on TV, but really the people behind the scenes are just as passionate, as excitable as we are about how we develop games. And funnily enough, a few years ago, we were doing some filming with McLaren. And we soon realized that we actually work in very similar ways, and everybody's so in love with what they do that they do go the extra mile and really push those boundaries.
We have one from anonymous attendee for Ben. How easy is it to come up with new and unique levels or ideas for levels, and where do your brilliant ideas come from? From a huge Fall Guys fan.
Oh, well, new ideas, easy, just get in a room and put them all down, but for them to actually be good is the next bit. But I think our ideas are all inspired from game shows. I think we haven't hidden that, like Takeshi's Castle and It's Knockout, and also kids games as well. I think the thing for us that we always look at the root of each idea is a fun interaction, because the mini games are so small and you're pretty much just doing one thing over and over. It's stealing a tail or jumping over things. We really try to focus on those small interactions and then build a level around that. And it usually sounds easy when we first say it, but then there's a process of that actually, technically working and then actually being fun is the tricky bit. But coming up with the ideas, that's fine. It's a spreadsheet of them.
It's because people are so hungry for more as well. Yeah. They're just like, when's the next stuff coming?
Yeah. More. Well, we have more coming out on Monday, actually. So,
hey, there you go. We have one for Siobhan from Robert Middleton. How did you approach managing the scope on something like Dreams? It's big.
Spreadsheets.
Everyone loves
prioritization. I do love a good spreadsheet. It was very challenging because, of course, as the team was really small to begin with as well. So there was only 4 or 5 people working on it for a few years, and they were working particularly on the sculpting, and we sort of moved through the disciplines almost like one by one at one phase of development. And so we're sort of trying to get them to sort of a certain level. But there did come a point where it was like, okay, we have to get to the granular. And I think, like, as a producer, there comes a point where you just have to understand everything down to the minute detail, and it needs to be in an Excel, and it needs to have a prioritization and an exceptionally good color code system. It is ruthlessly managed.
I love it.
And you sort of just get it under control so that you can actually figure out how to ship it. But there was a lot on the cutting room floor for Dreams. But yeah, there is a point of the team where they also want to just ship. So you get past that point where you can start to sort of see it on the screen enough. As you call it, like the eclipse moment, where the idea and what is on the screen kind of eclipse each other, and you're like, right, okay, now we just need to figure out how we actually, get this thing in a box. And then it's a lot of debate, discussion, and sort of discretion of just saying, no, we're not going to do that.
And Alex Shedlock says, those with narrative-driven games, so I think that's Alex, Stephen, and Ned, did you use any other mediums as references for your story structure? So screenplays, stage plays, or total improvisation?
Okay. So structurally, I guess, kind of just as we went along, trying to figure out what we were trying to tell and the order we wanted people to experience different things. But like, obviously we're taking reference from, like I said before, our childhood films and these sort of very short, weird fantasy, these dark fantasy stories that kind of came and went, and we never saw anything like that again. And then, they've started to come back a bit more now. So I guess it's that really just influence from what we watched as kids, but the story, the order, the way we tell the story was, we have a series of things we want the players to experience and trying to weave that narrative through there.
Okay, well, take one more question because we're kind of out of time. But Roxanne Marshall says, games have saved a lot of people during the pandemic and beyond who suffer with mental illness. Is that something you think about during the development of games? I think it's such a good point. I mean, games, I know so many people who've really turned to games during lockdown, and it's helped them so much, like so massively.
I think a few people have touched on it, but like the lockdown started a year ago, and then that was our final stretch for the development of the game. And the team also grew in that time. So we haven't met most of my colleagues now, but it was really hard for everyone, obviously, now suddenly having to work from home. And we definitely found companionship through playing the game together with each other while we were making it. And then I think when we did our first public betas and then we saw that was then resonating with everyone else, that was the first inkling that actually kind of this is helping people a bit. And then I think is why it kind of took off. But
yeah, and certainly we see creativity as a real outlet for people. There's some really wonderful community stories of sort of people sort of finding ways to to sort of express themselves. So yeah, we definitely think about it, and we sort of make sure that the conversations we have with people are sort of treated carefully and thoughtfully.
Well, amazing. I guess we should probably leave it there. Otherwise, we'll just be going forever. But I mean, thank you so much. And congratulations again on your nominations, and best of luck at the awards. So please do join us for the awards on the 25th of March. They'll be streamed on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and Steam for the very first time, and it's all live from 7 p.m. So do tune in for that. And thank you all so much again, and hopefully chat to you all again very soon about it.
Oh, thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye, everyone.